Hi, Liang.
Hello, David.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing good. Happy to be doing our second episode.
Yeah, me too. So welcome everybody to our second episode of this podcast. We're going to be focusing on life design, or what to do when you feel bored or like you lack purpose in your life. This is something that Liang has been grappling with lately. My name's David. I'm a licensed psychologist. David Messer. I'm a licensed psychologist in the Phoenix area.
And I am Liang, and I am also a psychologist based in Seattle.
So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about, like I just said, what to do if you find yourself feeling disoriented or bored, or like your life feels like it's lacking purpose. We're mostly going to be talking about life design, which is the ideas, sort of a term for these ideas developed by two Stanford professors who have studied technology and mental health. And later we might talk about some other ideas you could use if you find yourself in this situation as well. As always, we will share about our own struggles, our own experiences with feeling, a lack of meaning or direction, and how we've handled them. Before we talk about us, we wanted just to do a very brief kind of reflective exercise with all of you. So if you want to, feel free not to do it. Go ahead and remember a time in which you felt really plugged into your purpose, or like your life had a clear direction. And feel free just to pause the audio or the video here to do this. And next, notice how that feels inside of you to be connected to your purpose. And then if you want to wipe that away, maybe remember a time when you felt like you lacked direction. And just notice what that feels like inside of you. So probably we've all had some of these experiences throughout our life. But Liang, do you want to share a little bit about yours, or why this is coming up for you now?
Yeah, I think this is a topic that's very close to my heart. Partly because I am going through a mild version of this. I just turned 50, and so it's a transition phase in my life, and it's also something that I see in my clients often. People working in tech, but they feel sort of like a loss of meaning and struggle with what's do they want to do for the rest of their life. So there's like an existential um, uh, theme to this struggle. And I said that this is like a mild version because when I was in my late 20s and early 30s, that was something I was really struggling with. Um, I I was an engineer, but I did not like what I was doing, and I had no idea how I would navigate finding my passion, right? Which is a lot of young people, and I guess maybe all of us want, right? It's like I want to do something that I feel passionate about, and I don't know how to do that. How do I find that? Can I make money? Can I have job security? And so I say that I'm experiencing a mild version of that because in many ways, I feel very content with my career. I'm happy with being a psychologist. I'm financially stable and I have stable relationships. But I also start to wonder as I'm entering, maybe one can say, sort of the latter stage of life. It's like, what's meaningful for me? Like when I have free time, whether it's on the weekends or in the evenings, like how do I want to use that time? Right? When I was young, I would be like, okay, let me read more books, learn more things. But I feel like I don't feel the need to like attain more or acquire more knowledge. And so it's a question of, yeah, what gives me meaning? Like, what is the purpose, right, for the next 10, 15, perhaps 20 years?
And I'm curious, Liang, what was it that tipped you off? Like, what were you aware of in your own emotions or
Mhm.
body or thinking that made you think, I'm a little bit off course here. Like, it doesn't quite feel right.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me right now, it's a feeling of restlessness. So I would be, like maybe it's Tuesday evening, and I would be, what should I be doing? Right? I
Mhm.
can watch Netflix, I can watch YouTube, but after maybe an hour or at most two, then I just have this feeling of like restlessness.
Mm,
Like, what am I doing? Like, this is like a waste of time. Like, but should I read a book? But what books interest me? Like, not none of the books that used to interest me anymore. Like, I don't need to read more psychology book. I kind of went through that phase of reading a lot of psychology book or taking a lot of classes related to psychology. So and I'm not actively looking for new relationships. So there's a feeling of just restlessness.
yeah, I was gonna say. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. It.
No, go
I,
ahead.
I imagine a lot of people can relate to that. Like maybe when you get done with being at work or caring for someone or whatever your day consists of,
Mm.
school, volunteering, that the options are kind of like you say. Like, do I watch Netflix for a couple hours? Does
Uh-huh.
that maybe that feels relaxing, and maybe I like that sometimes, but also maybe that's not so meaningful. And how do I find what actually feels like, oh, I want to do this, as opposed to it's just kind of the default thing that I do, when I have free time that I need to fill. So,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I'm curious, like, I'm curious to hear a bit about life design. It sounds like that's what you've been using now. I'm
Mhm.
also curious, maybe this is a topic for a different time, but like how you dealt with this when you were younger as well, because it sounds
Yeah.
like you've sort of passed through phases like this a couple of times.
Right, right. And in some way, this experience there's a certain like privilege in terms of what I'm experiencing, because I think for a lot of people, they're just coping with stress, right? When they have free time, it's like, oh my gosh, my day has been so stressful. I just need some time to wind down. Or they have children, so they're constantly um, helping, like raising children or working, and so for most people, what they are looking for is that vacation. Like, oh, I'm looking forward to the day when I have more free time.
Mhm,
So what I mean by that, this is somewhat of a privileged situation, is like, okay, I have free time. That and similarly, when I was younger, when I was 26, 28, I was just like, after work, I don't want to work anymore, and I have all this free time, and I don't know, other than maybe pursuing relationships, like I don't know what to do at that time.
mhm.
I think where the difference is, when I was younger, I think it was very clear that what I wanted was like, I need to figure out my career.
Mhm.
And so a lot of that free time was used to figuring that out. Whereas now, the free time is like, I don't even know what I want to do with that time.
Yeah. Well, do you want to tell us a little bit about life design and what that is and how you've sort of explored it or used it to find some direction?
Yeah, I think this is I know you've, I recently read this book called Designing Your Life, as you mentioned, by two product designers. I think this is a book that you have read as well. So, I'm
Yeah.
really curious what lessons or what takeaway you've learned and how you've applied to your life.
Mhm.
And I only came across this book recently because I was listening to podcasts or watching videos about talking about this new old age, right? Some people call this like the second phase of life, and what do people do when they are retired? And so the book really applies the concept of product design to how we want to design our life. And I thought it was really powerful because in many ways, where our life is something that we create, something that we design. And it makes sense that a lot of the principles that we apply to create great products, right? Maybe whether it's an Apple product or whether it's something um, some cool consumer gadget, right? There's a lot of design process that goes into it, and so there are many principles that I think really applies. And obviously, we will only talk about the ones that, given the limit of time, we will just talk about a few that I find really powerful. I think the first one was that this that requires a lot of prototyping, right? So you couldn't really figure out what you want unless you do some trial and error. So there's a bias towards action, right? So I think I had probably, when I was younger, I thought like, okay, maybe I just need to take classes. I need to read books, and through that, I can find my answer that way. But the idea of prototyping and the bias towards action is that you actually have to try out things to actually find out more about yourself, find out more about what you like, what you dislike, and find out what the world offers. And so, and it could be, when I was younger, it was more like maybe volunteering work, but I think it's much more extensive. So when I was younger, I was an engineer. I didn't know what I wanted, but I spent 2 years in the Philippines. I got an MBA. I became a business consulting. So it's like a 5-7 year long process to actually, take a different job. And in retrospect, why I could see that as prototyping. But of course, in that moment, I thought, I was like, okay, this is what I wanted to do. And, I hope this work out. If it doesn't work out, then like, this would really, really suck. And so I think the mindset I had when I was younger was that, this is all or nothing, right? So I really like this idea of prototyping and bias towards action. So you have
And
to do
oh, I'm
things
sorry.
to get data.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's in contrast to how I think a lot of us often think about our lives, which is, I don't know what to do, so I should figure it out. I should think about it. I should, sort of figure out what's meaningful first and then go do that thing. What you're talking about is sort of putting I don't know, I don't want to say the cart before the horse, because maybe the cart is supposed to go before the horse, but like actually going out and just trying a bunch of different things and then see how you feel about them, rather than pushing yourself to figure out all the answers first. Is that kind of what you're saying, or what the two authors are saying?
Exactly. And I think you shared with me, when you read this book, you were able to think back, our teaching experience in grad school, like teaching young college students, like freshmen. It's like, hey, take this class so that you can figure out what your career is going to be, right?
Yeah, no, this was the most useful book. Just so in case anybody is looking for it, the full title is called Designing Your Life: How to Build a Well-Lived, Joyful Life. And the authors are Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. Yeah, this was the most useful book because it didn't as much talk about content. Liang and I taught career development for many years at the university. it didn't talk about the content about, let's research a bunch of careers and whatnot. It was really about just what you're saying, Liang, about mindset, about ways to approach your life, or like how to actually behave, or to think about how you might act in the world that get you from point A to point B. Because I think part of the issue is life is so varied and multifaceted and nuanced, and you never really know what's going to happen when you start doing something, that
Mhm,
that
mhm.
it's, trying to figure out in advance. And I think we all, in a certain way, or I don't know, many of us, me, um, I don't want to fail, right? I don't want to take a wrong turn. And so it's like, oh, I want to figure it out first so that I don't, make
Right.
mistakes or waste time or whatnot. But the truth is, or at least what I find, and I actually really agree with the folks in this book, is that the longer I spend, not that there's no worth in trying to think about it
Mhm,
and figure it
mhm.
out, but that you can get caught in this sort of like ruminating,
That's
procrastinating, oh, it's scary to actually try things. Whereas when you actually go out and do it, then you learn real quickly, oh,
right.
that's funny. I didn't think I'd like that, but I do. And I really thought I'd like this, and I kind of do. But yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think there's the misconception, or that, when we try something and it doesn't work out, that's a mistake. Versus with the book, and the principle of prototyping is like, you're not making a mistake, you're just trying out things. And I think it speaks to, especially for younger folks, right? That, hey, like, I better need to. I can't. I don't have enough time. I have to make the right decision about my career. Otherwise, there's no going back, right? And so now I think, obviously at my, you know uh, turning 50, I think, I do have maybe more perspective, so I don't think of myself as making mistakes when I try things, but there's still this, maybe desire to, like, hey, I want to figure out things before I take the first step. Um, so one thing that I am, as I'm trying to grapple with what to do with, um, where to put my energy, right? So one of the things, like, I wrote a book, right? I spent almost like 2 years writing a book, and of course, the problem with writing a book is, like, how do I get it published, right? So, and I came to the realization that, wow, getting it published is really hard. And so I did kind of maybe think for a while, like, oh, was that a mistake? Was that a waste of time? But in retrospect, now the new thinking, right? This is, of course, this could change, right? Is that, hey, that was like a type of prototyping. I tried something, and even though maybe it will never be published, or I will find a lot of readers, but it's still something that could be applied or could be useful in some way. So it's never, prototyping is never a waste of time, right? It's something you learn about yourself, you learn something, and it can still be, it will still help towards figuring out what I ultimately want. And it might be elements of that, not maybe all of it, right? So the book can still help, helpful in some way, but not maybe in the original way that I thought it would. Like,
Yeah.
I will become famous, or I'll make a lot of money. Maybe it won't give me that, right?
The image in my mind, I don't know why this is the image that comes up, but it's sort of like imagine you're in a dark room and you have to find your way out. And that, okay, maybe you try to let your eyes get used to the light, you see which way to go, but in the end, okay, you choose the direction you go. If you run into a wall that way, well, you've learned something. You
Mhm.
know that it's not in that direction, so now I try something else. So you could say, oh, that's a mistake, but in truth, like you're saying, well, I have some valuable information now, and now I know I can try a different path. Little by little, you bump into enough walls and you figure, oh, okay, the hallway goes this way.
Exactly. Um, and so in the book, there's a concept of wayfinding, right? That even though you don't know exactly where you're going, but you cannot, the only way to figure out is to sail into the ocean, sail into the unknown. And through, um, traveling, through gathering information, right, you can actually correct course as you go along. And this is sort of like the ancient way of navigating. And I think it's how designers think about designing products. And I think that's how we should think about how to create the life that we want as well.
Yeah. And are there any other, so prototyping, which is basically getting out there, trying a bunch of new things, seeing which connect with you, which don't, right? Which resonate with you, which don't. Which specifically in this case is, when do you have that feeling we talked about in the reflective exercise of being connected to your purpose? When do you have that feeling of not being connected to your purpose? So having a sense of that internally is helpful. What else, Liang, did you get from the book, from reading the book, or what other useful ideas or practices did you take from it?
Yeah, so there's definitely an important element of like figuring out your values. And so, in the book, there are a few activities about like, hey, what is sort of my North Star, right? So when you think about values, is it about money? Is it about fame? Or is it about, do I want stability, right? Do I want autonomy? Do I want to work with people that I like? So I think it is helpful to clarify, right? Especially for young folks, but I think even true for anyone, including someone like who's older like myself, to think about like, yeah, what is important for me at this point, at this stage in my life. And so I I was never really driven by money. And so in this phase, and so there's some activity that the book also helps you figure out, is to kind of journal about your day and rate each activity by how engaged you feel and how energized you feel. And I would think, I think the truth is that what energizes you or what motivates you is probably something that aligns with your value, right? Maybe you're learning something, you're growing something, or maybe this is that you're helping someone, right? Or maybe you're getting a lot of recognition, right? So it could be, or maybe you're making a lot of money and you feel really energized by that, right? So and so for me, I think when I was doing that activity, one of the two things that I recognize, like one is the feeling of community, right? I realized that, hey, when I'm hanging out with people, when I'm like talking with you, like, hey, I feel really energized, I feel really engaged. And so so for me, like community is actually one of the things that I identify as important to me at this stage in my life, right? That I want to build more, to create new relationship and also to enhance the relationship that I have.
Yeah, so it sounds like this is leveraging, this particular reflection is leveraging the fact that your day, whoever you are, is already filled with a variety of activities. Even if it feels like I just go to work and I come home, you probably interact with different people throughout the day. Maybe you do some errands, maybe there's a little bit of leisure, that there are already a lot of activities, and that if you reflect a bit or write a bit about which of these activities you're already doing that feels fulfilling or not, that can give you a little bit of insight, especially if you think about, why is this? Why do I feel connected to my purpose when I'm doing this? Or what is it that really makes me want to get away from that activity? Can give you some ideas about where to pursue.
Right. And so so that's where you can start to get a lot of clues about what is meaningful or important to you. And then the other thing that I like was there's a lot of activities that we could do. Like you could do like a mind mapping, right, to kind of brainstorm about different ways to do more of what you like.
Is that just like drawing circles on a paper and connecting, writing words in them?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can brainstorm by yourself, right? You can do a mind map. Let's say, okay, let's say community is sort of the circle in the middle, and then it's like, okay, now let me think of anything that comes to mind that's related to community, right? And you don't don't filter or don't judge, and then so you have like another circle that extends from the circle in the middle, but from the second circle, you can expand on that as well. So you can have like 3 layers.
Sort of a spider web of
Exactly.
ideas.
Right. So I think that was a really cool activity. So when I was doing that activity, I was like, okay, maybe like I can teach, or maybe teach a college class, right? Or maybe I should, reach out to my old friends, or so there's a few things. I don't remember exactly all of it, but the like the teaching at a college, I thought like, hey, that was not something that I really was on my radar, but writing it out really helped me. Maybe that's something I could do.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think one of the keys to an activity like that or an exercise like that, um, is really not to censor or judge your ideas. Like, I think there are all sorts of things that we think, oh, I probably can't do that, or that would be hard. But instead, just to be really open to what you actually are interested in, right? So if like community and you think, I love watching square dancing,
mhm,
and so what if I travel to Ireland and learn square dancing from where it can. By the way, have no idea if that's where square dancing comes from, so I don't mean to, certainly no, not throwing any shade at Ireland. I think it'd be a great place to visit. um, but to be open to just have fun with it, just sort of allow your mind to, oh,
Thank
what if I did this or that, even if it's,
you.
they talk about this in the book, of coming up with some really silly ideas that are really outrageous or out there, just to get used to the idea of not censoring and exploring all the different options.
Yeah. And I think one thing I noticed, like obviously, that activity is not gonna suddenly create some solution or something that's gonna give you the path to success, right? But I think it sort of enhances your general awareness about what you find interesting. Is kind of like, like let's say if you bought like a Toyota, and suddenly you notice all the Toyotas that are on the streets, right? And so when you start to do these activities, and so your awareness shifts. So you start to pay attention to things that you normally wouldn't. So an example is, I was walking by like a martial art studio, like a dojo, right?
Mhm.
And I think, this is a place I've walked past many, many times. I never really thought about it. It's like, oh, okay, that's probably not for me. But just recently, when I walked past it again, I said, like, hey, maybe this is something I could try out. Like, when I attend a class, there is a community where you see the same people every day, and you have an instructor. And so I, joined a Brazilian jiu-jitsu class a couple of weeks ago. And so,
I'm so
and
curious how that's going, by the way, outside of the scope of
yeah,
the
yeah,
podcast, but I'd love to hear.
it's actually super fun. It's like
Oh,
literally
cool.
this is like a studio that I walked past like many times, but like
Yeah.
it gave me, so with that awareness, I'm able to pay attention to things that I didn't before.
Mhm.
And it turns out to be really fun. Like, so, as part of prototyping, right, I sign up for the class, and so I'll probably do it for maybe a few months, or for maybe I will be longer, maybe something that I'll do for the rest, for another 5-10 years. And
Yeah.
so I think there's like, because we are not gonna, come up with the solution or the path, right? It's really about tuning in and heightening your awareness, so that as you explore and try things, right, that I can be more attuned and have that there's like my energy like kind of shifts to figuring out what I want to do rather than just sort of this autopilot way of just going through the day, and not being in autopilot, which most
It,
people do.
it sounds like a change in orientation, like more than actually about the activities you end up doing. This like oh, what's his name? Oh, I can't remember his name. The guy who wrote "Do One Thing Different." Uh, Bill Hanson. I apologize to the writer. I'm going to look it up right now. Do One Thing Different. I have the book. It's on my bookshelf. It is written by, drum roll please, Bill O'Hanlon. Sorry, Bill O'Hanlon. But it's a similar idea of if you just start trying new things, if you do some different things, that it creates a different sense inside of you about what's possible, and just a different way of approaching your life, that you don't go down sort of the worn in grooves that don't allow you to try really much of anything new. The
Right.
different orientation allows, it's not that any of the particular new things you try are so special, but just the act of trying a bunch of new things makes it more likely that you'll hit on something that you really do love or discover something that is important to you. Is that
Yeah.
how you think about it?
Yeah. Definitely. And I think it's when you design something, like there's almost like an element of like creativity, right? When you think about product design, and it requires a lot of, I think, almost like kind of subconscious thinking, right? That you have to sleep on it, right? You have to maybe give time for your mind to digest information, and to because most likely, right, the solution, like for me, when I the idea of studying psychology really came out of like nowhere, or it appears to come out of nowhere, right? I didn't know anybody who was a psychologist or who did therapy, other than having done therapy myself. But it's in those moments where after you've struggled and tried different things, that it was like maybe for me, it was like in the middle of the night when the idea just suddenly kind of pop up, right? And I think that's really how my guess is like a lot of like solution to really difficult problems, they might happen like while you're taking a shower or taking a walk, right? So and so it's it's struggling with it, and then having a certain like or alignment orientation towards what you're looking for, and then your brain almost kind of like will give you the solution or work itself out after maybe a period of months and perhaps even years.
Yeah, this is some really interesting research about this, that like, for instance, that your brain essentially continues working on things in the background that you've tasked it with doing. Um, like, I've read about some research where they tell you to come up with as many words as you can that begin with the letter E in 30 seconds. So you're
Mhm.
like, okay, ever, equal, whatever. At
Right.
the end of the 30 seconds, okay, you have a certain number of words, but that people would find throughout the rest of the day and sometimes into the next day, words with E would just pop into their mind. It's like their brain
Right.
was tasked with doing this. And so in
Right.
the same way, if you change your orientation or you adopt a certain focus,
That's right.
you're leveraging the whole sort of subconscious to be working on your behalf toward this goal. And this is not like The Secret, like you make things appear out of thin air. Apologies to anybody who's super into The Secret. I will just
The law of
identify as somebody who's
attraction.
not super into The Secret. But there's a very real way in which I think, Liang, what you're saying, that your perception of the world, your
Right.
perception of what the possibilities are,
Right.
changes and shifts when you shift your focus.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's probably how people get unstuck, right? When you feel stuck, it's hard to kind of what they say about like being able to solve the problem at the same level of consciousness that you
Hmm.
created the problem, right?
Yeah.
So I know we're, um, just to keep our episode within a reasonable amount of time. Do you have? Obviously, I have like a few other thoughts, but I want to check in with you too, to see if you what are some, if you have any personal experiences or just some reflection on this process?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few other ideas that are useful for me. Uh, so we've been talking about sort of this prototyping, or I call this outside in learning, doing things on the outside and then figuring out what they mean to you. There are inside out methods too of figuring out why you feel a certain way or what's important to you. So just to highlight a couple of those, um, sometimes if you feel um, bored or like you lack purpose or direction, sometimes there's another feeling hiding underneath that. So you might be aware, if I feel bored, is there anything else going on? Are there other feelings? Maybe unresolved situations or things that I'm actually
Mm,
sad about or angry about. So, doing a little digging there. Um, I guess the basic idea is that your feelings are logical, uh, that there are good reasons that your feelings are trustworthy. There's something to learn from them. So
mm,
sometimes, in our work as psychologists, if someone comes to me with a feeling that's uncomfortable or they don't like, I'll often ask them, when did you first notice this? Like, when did this feeling start? Can
mhm,
you remember a time before this feeling was there? And then, did anything change at about the time that this changed? That can give you a hint about maybe why this has developed.
mhm,
Um, and then once you know if there's an underlying reason why you feel bored or purposeless, then you can address that. So I've had clients sometimes, for example, who say, well, yeah, ever since uh, my pet died or something, I've just felt really bored. And then we might go back and say, how was it for your pet to die? How did your life change when your pet died? Anything else that you feel like you need to feel related to that you sort of
mhm,
might have turned off. So there are some inside out ways of reflecting on when this feeling started that can give you a hint as well as to
mhm.
what you might need in your life to feel more sort of back in flow again.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more that everything starts from paying attention to your feelings and to your inner experience in order to really fully understand like what is the thing that it's maybe missing or struggling with, right? Yeah, and I think a lot of people um, they come in with feeling like I just feel really unmotivated. I would feel really depressed. I feel really um, like frustrated and irritable, and they don't really know why they feel that way. Um, and usually, but the starting point is to recognize and really understand, um, to accept that this is what they're feeling, and then usually, right, that's when they may start to realize, maybe it's because I don't like my work, or the work hasn't is no longer meaningful. It used to be meaningful, but no longer meaningful. Or maybe the company mission doesn't align with what it was before. But the changes, because it happens so gradually and so subtly that they don't really understand why they're suddenly feeling this way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, and this could be you, this happens for me too. If you're feeling in a way that's unpleasant for you, I think oftentimes we end up getting frustrated with ourselves. Why can't I feel better? Why do I just recurrently feel depressed or anxious or scared or something? And it's a little bit of a leap of faith, but I'll tell you from many years practicing in this field as well as my own self-reflection, that you are trustworthy and good, and there is a good reason why you feel this way, that you're not bad
Right.
just because maybe you feel down or you feel worried some of the time. That if you, especially in a trusted space like with a therapist or a close friend or a family member who you trust, are able to really compassionately and curiously look at your life, you will often find that there are good reasons why you feel a little off. And the flip side of feeling off is that there's a need underneath there that is really important for you living a happy life. And once you figure out what that is, by golly, that's fantastic. Now you can actually meet that need
Mhm.
and live that happy life that you want. So it is possible. I feel like a motivational speaker. You can do it. It is, but
Yeah.
really, it is possible. But it takes this really sort of sometimes leap of faith to trust yourself that you are reliable. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it took me a long time to trust my intuition, my emotion, and not think that, well, there's something wrong with me or I shouldn't feel that way.
yeah, yeah. Anything else, Liang, that you want to add before we wrap up today?
Um, Yeah, I think one final thought is that this process is, ideally, if you can, whether getting unstuck or figuring out your life's direction or meaning of life, it's always best done if you can talk to more people, right? So when we think about brainstorming ideas, one of the really good idea from the book was like to do the brainstorming with your close friends, so that they also can come up with ideas, right? Because if they know really really well, they may able to um, see things that we don't see. And one thing that we did a lot when we were teaching the college class was to have the students do information interviews, right? Talk to people whose career that you find interesting, right? And just get more information. So it's really hard to do this on your own. And so the more people that you can talk to, the more people that you can involve in this process, the more helpful.
Yeah, seek out trusted others, people who care about you, whose views you respect. Yeah. Well, we would love to hear from all of you watching, listening, especially if you've had any experiences of feeling like kind of disconnected from your purpose. And if so, how you addressed it to get back on course, or if there are any times in your life where you feel really connected to your purpose, what are those times and why do you think that is? Why do you think that that feels so sort of energizing for you? So anyway, pleasure to spend I guess it's not quite an hour, 40 minutes or so with
Mhm.
all of you. And Liang, always a pleasure to hang out and chat with you.
Yeah, and if you like our episode, like and subscribe. Yay!
Like, subscribe, comment. Yeah.
That's right.
No, we'd love that actually. That'd be helpful. So,
All right.
all right, very good. Take care.
Take care.
All right.